Is it on? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Gifford Fire Virtual Community Meeting. I am Cecile Juliet. I am one of the information officers on the Gifford Fire. This evening, you are going to hear from members of the Unified Command Team and our cooperators. The Gifford Fire is currently 132,000 acres, 605 acres, with 51% containment, and it is nearly 5,000 personnel assigned. We are live streaming this meeting on the Los Padres National Forest Facebook page and the Fire YouTube channel. For those of you who are watching online, please write your questions in the chat and we will answer them in the questions and answer portion of this meeting after the speaker presentation.
Hola, mi nombre es Chahaira. Estaré aquí para responder cualquier preguntas en español si es necesario. Hi, my name is Chahaira. I will be here to help translate or answer any questions you may have in Spanish. Thank you.
Beginning our presentation tonight is the CAL FIRE San Luis Obispo Unit Chief, John Owens.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the Gifford Fire virtual community meeting. And I'd just like to say that this fire is a unified command fire, which means that we have CAL FIRE, we have the U.S. Forest Service, San Luis Obispo Sheriff's Office, and Team 5 unified in the command of this fire, and for also working together with not only federal and state agencies, but also local government and private contractors that are fighting this fire and working to gain it under control and protect the communities and that are in our county. And I just want to say that the group of people that are working on this fire have done an exceptional job in coming together and working on this fire. And we've had some minimal injuries to firefighters, and it shows you how well of a plan this group has come up with to fight this fire. And hopefully we'll be able to close this out very soon. And staff that's coming up behind me is going to be able to give you a very good briefing on the status of the fire and what's going to be happening in the future. And please take this opportunity to ask any questions that you want answered about this incident. And next up will be Ben Gray from the United States Forest Service. He's online, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Owens, and thank you for attending. My name is Ben Gray. I am the District Ranger for the Santa Lucia Ranger District for the Los Padres National Forest. As Chief Owens mentioned, this is a unified response to this emergency. The Forest Service, during our normal day jobs, we protect the natural resources and serve the public that comes to recreate on the forest. But when we have an emergency like this, our job shifts to protecting life and property. The people that are our neighbors that are close to the forest that may be impacted by this emergency. And we couldn't do it without the unified response of CAL FIRE, Santa Barbara County, San Luis Obispo County, the sheriff's departments, and everybody that's come, including Team 5 and all the people that make up that team, and the 5,000 people here on the fire. So thank you for your interest in this. I'll be here if you have any questions. And I would like to say I really do appreciate the response we've had so far. This has been a challenging fire, and the response so far from the team and all the firefighters has been phenomenal. So thank you for your time. I'll be here if you have any questions. Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to pass on this conversation now to Tony Chipinti.
Good evening. As stated, my name is Tony Chipinti, Planning Operations Trainee with Incident Management Team 5. And I'll speak to a little bit of the actions that have taken place in the current update of the Gifford fire. And I think it's important to note that a fire like this has some challenges associated with it. Chief Owens talked about the fantastic work that's been done by the resources out here. It's positioned in an area that's straddled on one side by the interior Cuyama Valley and to the coast, Santa Maria, and that presents some really challenging weather and environmental conditions. It's situated in a portion of the Los Padres National Forest that's very steep and has moved into an area that hasn't seen fire history for almost 50 years. So I will say the efforts out here have been exceptional, and I'll give you a brief overview starting down here on the southern portion of the fire, San Rafael Wilderness. We've had crews inserted down in there for nearly the entire time that we've been out here, constructing direct line and securing that to mitigate any further spread, and we're feeling really confident with the status of that portion of the fire. Moving over here towards the 166 corridor on the south side, just west of the Cuyama Valley, we haven't seen any movement in that area in some time. There are still some sources of heat out there. There's still some areas that we're giving extra attention to ensure that we can turn it over here pretty soon. So you can anticipate crews still working out there and patrolling that area of the fire. Moving up here to the northern portion, one side of the fire is bordered the Madre Fire Scar, and up here just above California Valley, this portion of the fire did give us some challenges several days ago. Crews have aggressively been working out there to improve control lines and mitigate any threats to the line, and we've had success with that the last couple of days. As we move over here, just south of the community of Pozo, south of Avenales Ranch Road, this is a portion of the fire that we've invested a lot of time and energy to, specifically the last few days, implementing our strategic firing plan. This is a plan that we had spent several days preparing for and then several days executing. And I will tell you, it's been hugely successful. Over the course of the last few days, we have been able to conduct this firing operation that allows us to bring fire to our control lines on our terms. And I'm happy to state that although we did have some challenges with spot fires and slopovers, it is still sitting south of our control objective of Pozo Road, and crews have been out there all day aggressively mopping that up and putting more retardant on the line. And again, that's been a really successful operation. As we move down here to the southwest side of the fire through the Wasna Valley, crews continue to mop up and reinforce control lines from, again, those firing operations over the past few days. And we've had that same level of success moving back down to the west side of the 166 corridor. I believe there was some discussion points that were possibly going to come up. And it's really to speak to the efforts of the resources that have been out here. There's been many questions about how we apply resources or what we have. And so you see up here on the screen, one of the best tools that we have to combat these fires is our aviation resources. At one point on the incident, we've had more than 32 helicopters assigned, and we've dropped several million gallons of retardant, which has, again, given the boots on the ground the ability to go in and aggressively suppress this fire. Beyond aerial resources, we've had a number of ground-based resources. If you want to switch to the next slide, here you can see one of our heavy equipment operators and a bulldozer constructing both direct and indirect control lines. And you can tell by the magnitude of the flames that he's operating next to, it is challenging conditions. And with almost 5,000 people assigned to this incident, it's imperative that the collaboration that we've seen from both the state agencies, the federal agencies, and the local agencies has functioned in the way that it has, and that's what's led to the success that we've seen. And if you'll slide to the next picture, one of the things that tends to pique interest from folks is they'll look out and say, well, there's no more smoke in the sky. Is the fire out? And though as we gain containment, you'll see less and less smoke in the air, it's important to understand that we still have some time ahead as we engage into our fire suppression repair efforts, as we return the landscape to the best possible ability that we can. And crews will be continuing to do that, as well as continuing our suppression efforts on the fire for a bit of time to come. Thank you. And I will be turning it over to incident meteorologist Caleb Gunsky.
Hi, I'm Caleb Grunsky, incident meteorologist, or one of the incident meteorologists at the fire. My role at the fire is to provide weather forecasts for the firefighters that are fighting the fire to keep them safe, whether it be from high winds, thunderstorms, or how that weather will affect the fire, whether it's changing direction on the firefighters or what have you. So my job is basically safety. And the forecast over the next few days, our main concern is for a bit breezier winds tonight through Friday night. Nothing major, nothing significant, just something to be aware of. But then as we go through the weekend, or get into the weekend, we'll have much cooler temperatures coming in, well below normal highs for this time of year, and much less drier air. So that is very helpful for our firefighting efforts. And we do warm up a little bit next week, throughout next week, but we should not be as hot as what we experienced earlier this week. So all in all, this is very helpful weather for our firefighting efforts, and that's all I have. Our next speaker will be Garrett Hazelton, our fire behavior analyst.
All right. Good evening, everyone in Internet land. Garrett Hazelton, I'm the fire behavior analyst. So if you guys have been following along this incident, you'll notice that the smoke is greatly diminished. I think we have a slide, and then we'll talk about why that is and why we're being successful with that. So a few days ago, if you follow on, I talked about this cliff that we're seeing in the forecast, and that was all that green we're seeing on there. So to give you an idea why we are so successful, working with operations, they developed a really strong firing plan where they were going to utilize that wind in conjunction with how they're going to use the fire on the landscape for those fuels. So with this wind coming this way, they started up at the top and made it work against the wind, right? So it didn't want to use these big giant runs. While there was a lot of smoke in the air, it was less than what we've seen over the future. And with that wind coming down and blanketing that fuel bed, it allowed for those fuels to burn under the conditions that we see. So very, very successful. So as we look into the next with this improving weather conditions, we're worried about, like you mentioned, some slops and spots. So if you're not familiar with that is, that's when a little ember gets over our line. Happy to report with these favorable conditions and these clear airs, those aren't really going to challenge us. And with this cooler temperatures going up, we're not seeing any significant threats. Now, does that mean all the smoke's going to go out of the air? Absolutely not. You might see smoke for a couple of days to weeks on end, but that's to be expected as those larger fuels cook down. But from, here we go, perfect. So if we look at this, this is right at the junction point, looking south from the Pozo fire station. If you can see the columns coming over, so we're using those wind energies to push this back and moderate this fire spread. So this is right at that critical moment where it worked up here and into that high mountain area. So overall, very, very successful. And then one of the things that you guys can look at, that smoke color. That white color, that's the moisture coming out of the plant. So that means it's a low intensity and it's working the way we want it to work. So great job to the operations in executing that plan. I welcome any questions that you might have, so please send them in. Next, I'd like to welcome up Commander Ian Dowdy from the Sheriff's Department.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Ian Dowdy. I'm a commander with the Sheriff's Office, and I'll speak tonight about the evacuations and the road closures and the actions of the Sheriff's Office. So we are happy to report that we're able to reduce some of the zones that were evacuation orders to warnings. 9 zones, predominantly on the southern to eastern edge of the fire, were reduced to warnings. And 6 zones in the similar area were reduced from warnings to open. When we reduce those areas from orders to warning, that does allow residents to return to those zones. When we convey that messaging, that will come out via the same way that the initial orders or warnings were sent out. So whether that's reverse 911 or through the wireless emergency alerts, that information will be conveyed that those zones have changed. So with that, it would also continue to recommend, if you have not done it, signing up at alertslow.org or Ready Slow and seeing everything that's needed on there. For the road closures in South County are Wasna Road east of Wasna Town Site. This was moved to accommodate the opening of Wasna Town Site Road to allow the residents to return there in accordance with the change of the zones. We also have Wasna River Road and Deer Creek Road are both hard closures. For our northern county area, we have Pozo Road and Las Politas. That's remained a hard closure, as well as River Road and Park Hill. Highway 166 has been opened, again, as the fire we've progressed in our containment of it on the northern side, and Highway 166 is open, although traffic is guided there with pilot cars. For the Sheriff's Office, we still are committed to maintaining our deputy presence and allied agency presence in the areas affected by evacuation orders to ensure that those are patrolled effectively. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'd like to introduce next Scott Jalbert with the San Luis Obispo County Office of Emergency Services.
Good evening. Our office is responsible for basically three things. One is the coordination effort and to support the incident outside the fire and law world. Second one is to provide public information, but probably the most important thing that we do is provide alert and warning to the public. When we issue an alert and warning to take a protective action, we generally use two different systems. We use the wireless emergency alert system, also known as a WEA, and the reverse 911 system. When we're conducting protective actions, and protective actions include either evacuation orders, which means it's time to leave the area, or evacuation warnings, which means prepare to evacuate, we will utilize our zones, and you probably have seen the the designation of the zones. You'll see like SLC 214. Everybody should know what their zone is, and prior to an emergency, you can find out your zone at readyslo.org. That's readyslo.org. And there you can look up your zone under emergency information. We also have a phone assistance center that's open. If you need any information, you can call 805-543-2444. And that call center will be open 8 to 5 through the weekend. We have several other numbers on our website, readyslo.org, if you need information on animal assistance, large animal housing, or horse emergency evacuation team. You can go again to Ready Slow and find those phone numbers. We received lots of questions in regards to air quality. We've been working with the local air pollution control district. We've been monitoring the situation, and the good news is that we're all green, and hopefully it'll stay that way. So no major issues there. We do have a human shelter open here in Santa Margarita at the community center on I Street. And you're welcome to go there if you need sheltering. And we also have animal sheltering for large animals. We have two locations. We have the Elks Rodeo Grounds in Santa Maria, and then we also have the Paso Robles Event Center. We also, for domestic animals, if you need some place to take your animals, you can take it at the Animal Services Department at 885 Oklahoma Avenue in San Luis Obispo. And finally, I'd just like to go back to one thing, and that is, in order to receive reverse 911 calls, you have to opt in. You have to sign up for that. And if you go to alertslo.org, alertslo.org, you can sign up to receive reverse 911 calls. And so with that, it's my pleasure to introduce San Luis Obispo County Board of Supervisor for District 5, Heather Moreno.
Thank you, Scotty, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and so much appreciation to those who made this virtual meeting, town hall happen. We're 2 weeks in, and I know many of you are eager for certainty to know when you can return home, to get back to your routines, and that waiting is hard. As we just heard, there are dedicated people working around the clock, on the ground, in the air, behind the scenes to protect lives and property, and we're so grateful for them. Chief Owens, I mean, he kind of laid it all out there, who's involved, and they're giving their all to this response. And in my office, we've really seen the way that this community pulls together. It's the check-ins, the offers of a place to stay for people and animals, the willingness to help however possible. And that's really the kind of care and the grit that makes a difference in a situation like this. So just know that we will keep showing up for you. And while the days ahead may still be uncertain, I know this community stands together until the job is done. Next, I would like to introduce the Unified Incident Commanders, Kevin Bohall and Alex McBath.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us for our presentation tonight. Really appreciate it. I want to say, as an incident commander on this fire, it's been a privilege to work with all the cooperators, all the different resources to put this fire to bed. My name is Alex McBath. I've been in a couple unified fires lately, and with CAL FIRE and these other agencies, and this fire is really pulled together. Some of our accomplishments are nothing to laugh at. It's a 132,000 acre fire. That's a huge footprint on the landscape. A lot of this fire is in terrain that is inaccessible in some parts. We have folks that are still deep in the wilderness that are cold trailing and trying to put the fire in the south end to bed. And then we have lots of folks up the north end trying to keep this fire where it's currently at. Our success has been derived from the unified command that we are currently in, our cooperators, and you, the public, bringing us the information so that we can be ahead of the game with the information. So from the IC, myself, I appreciate that and thank you. And I'd like to introduce Kevin Bohal.
Hi, good evening. So I wanted to talk real quick. First, I love this picture, but I did want to talk real quick about the last 48 hours and obviously some of the complex things that we had to do to get us to the point we're at. So the last 48 hours, we finished a complex firing operation that obviously everybody here was in support of and everybody knew about. But that complex fire operation was critical to reduce the fuels between the established control lines to make sure that we could protect values at risk. So we talk a lot about values at risk. We've already talked about repopulation and evacuations and all those sort of things. Protecting those values is the number one thing that we utilize in order to figure out where we're going to go with the incident, in addition to the stuff that we talked about with the plan, the fuels, the weather, the terrain, all those other things. The other thing we talk about, though, is values impacted. So when it comes to the evac and repopulation, we also have to survey things that were impacted in the fire. That could be roadways. That could be structures burned with, thankfully, we didn't have very many on this incident. It could be other things that have value that are out there that are going to make it unsafe for people to repopulate. So those are some of the things that we go into now that the incident is more static, to survey, to make sure that we can get folks back into their homes and put that repopulation plan into effect. And when we make those recommendations to law enforcement, that's one of the most important things that we work on. In the future days, we're still going to need support from the community in order to get to that point. So we appreciate your support, and we appreciate everything that you've done to support us to this point in the incident. Thank you.
And that concludes the formal presentation. And now we're going to open it up for the questions that you submitted online. And the first person who's going to step up and answer is Incident Meteorologist Rich Thompson.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm doing this instead of Caleb. Caleb has to run off and do an aviation briefing here in a couple minutes, so just us IMS keep him busy doing all sorts of weather-related things here on the fire. All right, so I got two questions here. First question is, will the marine layer provide enough moisture to protect the coastal cities? Well, first and foremost, the coastal cities, I think, are definitely very safe right now, basically due to the efforts of the firefighters out there. They did a really good job on that west end of the fire, and I don't think there's much concern about anything happening on that side of the fire. And with that marine layer coming in, the marine layer is going to deepen the next several days, so it's going to bring a lot of moisture into the west side of the fire. So it's going to definitely decrease the fire risk there along that flank of the fire. So the marine layers will be definitely a big help to keep things really at bay and really bring up those moistures and things like that. All right, second question is, should we wear N95 masks if we spend a significant time outside? As mentioned earlier, right now, the air quality across the entire county is actually in the good category. So I would think, unless you have a very sensitive respiratory system, I think you're fine not going with an N95 mask. But if you want to do check the air quality across the area, across the county, the town where you live, all you have to do is go to a website called airnow.gov, and you can put in a city, an address, and you'll get the current air quality and the forecasted air quality for the next 5 to 6 days. So definitely check that out if you're concerned about air quality.
Next up, we have Fire Behavior Analyst Garrett Hazelton.
All right, good evening. So I got two questions, and it kind of builds off of Rich's. Does the fog layer help firefighters like last night? So yes, absolutely, but the why is important. So if we think about plants like giant sponges, they can absorb moisture and they can lose moisture. So when that fog layer comes in, those plants soak up that moisture, and they soak up that moisture to the point where they're not going to burn. It's like if you're trying to start a campfire and the wood's all wet. And then the other thing that helps with is that fog layer burns off every morning. That takes a lot of that solar energy out of reaching those fields. So absolutely, and it's good to hear that that fog marine layer is improving. So the next question was about fire activity in the upper Los Barros Canyon. So a lot of questions and a lot of discussion about historical fire data, occurrence, time. So if fire.ca.gov, if you go to historical perimeters, you can see the fire history in your area. I will tell you though, when we look at it from the fire behavior side, at about 30 years, you're gonna see those fuels return. So if you see a fire that was in the 1950s, that doesn't lead a lot of confidence that that's gonna be able to help you in a current state. So at about 30 years. So use that, but it is good historical knowledge to know the fire over the landscape. Thank you.
Next up is Tony Achapinti.
All right, thank you. So there's a number of questions that I've received, and try to get through as many of them as we can. The first question is, how effective have the burning operations been? And I would say they've been extremely effective. As I spoke about earlier, our goal with firing operations is to bring the fire to the containment lines on our terms, and that's a strategic plan, and it's assessing really the three key factors when we look at what drives fire behavior. That's fuel, wind, and topography. And so when we can prepare for those firing operations by preparing the line, by ensuring we have retardant on the line, by ensuring that we have hose lines in place, it allows us to get that fire to the control lines as I'll say least invasively as possible. And it's important to understand that anytime we're engaging the fire, and there's another question that asks about types of line construction, so I'll touch on this a little bit. There's really several different types of line construction. There's direct line construction, in which we are right on the fire's edge with either hose lines or hand crews or bulldozers, and we are removing that fuel or suppressing the fire's edge with water right up against it. Anytime we are going to engage in a strategic operation, we want to choose the operation that is going to have the highest probability of success. And that's going to be dependent on a number of variables. And what I'll tell you is, the first several days when this fire started burning, we went direct as aggressively as we possibly can. And what we found is, because of the fuel, because of the terrain, and because of the weather, it was very challenging to suppress the fire in that manner, particularly on the north end of the fire. And so that's when we made the decision that we need to get to a point where we can get ahead of this, build those indirect control lines, and then conduct that firing operation. And though, again, it did test us yesterday. We had spot fires, we had slop overs, with I believe our largest being 160 acres. We have gotten around that, and we have gained containment as a result of that firing operation. Can you address how much of this progression is from the burn operation versus the fire jumping lines and going ahead? Did the strategy work? I believe I answered that for the most part. And again, the fire moved very aggressively for the last 2 weeks. And today, after the end of the firing operation early this morning, we've not seen any significant movement, though I will say that firefighters are still aggressively working to secure those control lines so that it does not move in the subsequent days. Please explain more about the various line construction and the different lines being established. PACE. So I touched on that a bit, but one acronym we use quite a bit when we're developing and implementing plans for these incidents is PACE. And that's really a philosophy more than anything else, that in order for us to be successful, we need to, number one, get ahead of things. And that's not just get ahead of the fire, but that is having plans so that we are the ones making decisions on how we're going to respond to the fire, and we're not letting the fire make decisions on how we have to respond. So PACE is primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. And in the way that translates on the map is various direct and indirect lines, where we might say, okay, this is our primary control line. If this is unsuccessful, now we have an alternate identified. We're working on building a contingency, and then we also work on implementing those emergencies. Have you seen any wildlife evacuating the area? I will say that I have. I mean, there's lots of animals in and around the Los Padres National Forest, but one thing I think that's important to remember is that fire is not a stranger to the landscape in Southern California, particularly this area. And when you look at a lot of the native vegetation, the chamise, the sagebrush, the plants and the species and the animals that live out there, fire is a natural part of their life cycle. And so although fire coming through an area might be abrupt and it might be abrasive, it is a naturally occurring phenomenon in this area, and it's been occurring for thousands and thousands of years. So I have seen wildlife, but again, this is something that's been going on for a long time. How confident are you that the fire can be stopped before it reaches Rinconada? Again, we had a really successful firing operation that we concluded this morning. We've had a lot of resources out there the last, really the last 2 weeks, but since we completed that firing operation, and we've not seen any significant movement on the fire since that was completed. Will the southwest wind later help to stop the westward progression of the fire? I'd say generally winds that come out of the southwest when regard to the western portion of the fire are favorable, but it's important to understand that there's a lot of variables in and around this fire that affect how the fire burns. There's orographic wind influences in which the wind moves around because of the terrain. There's the predominant winds that we get typically in this area that come onshore, and then there's diurnal winds that occur due to terrestrial heating of the land. And so though we may be getting southwest winds, the firefighters out there on the ground are having to pay constant attention to what the weather is doing, sometimes even posting individuals that are capturing weather through various devices to, again, stay ahead and anticipate how the fire is going to respond to that. A couple more questions. What about the arbors off Tank Farm in Wavertree, and wondering what the chances are of the fire getting to that area? This is a large fire, but I believe the area that's being referred to is just on the eastern side of the city of San Luis Obispo. I believe somewhere out in that area. And again, we have not seen any significant movement today, but we are continuing to secure and suppress this fire. It's certainly not out. We still have lots of resources out there, so I feel confident in the efforts that we've achieved the last 24 hours. I won't say it's out, but resources are making great progress. Is there an estimated time frame on when the fire will be 100% contained? That's difficult to say. What I would remind you is if you can envision a campfire where you might be burning logs throughout the course of an evening, and you wake up in the morning, there might not be fire in the fire pit, but those logs are still hot and they're still glowing, and there's still the possibility that a wind could come through and blow embers across the line. So when you don't see smoke in the sky, it doesn't necessarily mean that the fire is out, or at least the way that we look at it. We still have to put crews in there with tools, on foot, walk around and secure that fire's edge. And they'll quite literally get on their hands and knees at times and hand feel the edge to ensure that there's no heat anywhere in there any longer. And the larger the fuel is, like big logs and big oak limbs, those retain fuel for quite a long time. What is the likelihood for the fire to spread into the Santa Lucia Wilderness or the Edna Valley? I would defer back to the prior answers. Right now, we're feeling really confident with the fire's perimeter and where it's at. We haven't seen any significant movement, but we're going to continue to aggressively work that fire's edge on all sides of the fire. Have any structures been damaged? To date, we are aware of 5 total structures destroyed by the fire, one of them being a residential structure and the remaining being various types of outbuildings. Is the fire moving to San Luis Obispo? Kind of the same comment on questions prior. How much wildlife and domestic stock has been lost due to the fire? I don't have a definitive answer on that, but what I can tell you, certainly in the early stages of this fire, and I could speak on behalf of Santa Barbara County and San Luis Obispo County, we are fortunate that the local agencies around here have phenomenal relationships with a lot of the ranch owners and the livestock owners in this area, and there's a concerted effort very early on to make sure that there's open communication, that the ranchers are aware of this, and that we do everything we can with the little bit of time that we have to mitigate impacts. So though I don't have a total number of potential livestock or wildlife that were that have been lost due to this, I can tell you that throughout the entire course of this, the boots on the ground have tried to the best of their abilities to maintain that line of communication with the landowners out there and the ranchers. Was High Mountain Campground saved? The firing operation did take place on High Mountain Road, and I don't definitively know, because I'm not exactly sure where High Mountain Campground is, the status of that, but I do know that High Mountain Road was one of the control lines used for that firing operation. And I believe that is a bulk of the questions, and as more questions come out, I'm happy to answer any additional.
Next up is Commander Ian Dowdy of the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office.
Good evening. Thankfully, I have much fewer questions. For the first one, I have on 8/13, why was a hard closure implemented long after the fire was contained in Wasna Valley? The hard closure at Wasna Road and Wasna Town Site was established on 8/7, that Thursday. It has since been moved now to east on Wasna Road to allow that traffic to return to Wasna Town Site. So that hard closure at that specific intersection has been lifted and then moved east. Multiple questions for the Ranchita Estates on High Mountain Road. What is the objective criteria for downgrading to a warning zone and returning the road from a hard closure to a soft closure? There is no specific criteria that is utilized by the Emergency Operations Center or the Unified Command as far as a containment level that needs to be reached or anything specific. It is an overall view of the threat of the fire, taking into account the information from all the cooperators, everyone involved, to see where the fire is, where it may potentially be going, and what that status is. That being said, it is our intent to try to return people and repopulate areas as soon as possible. So when it is safe to do so, we will absolutely do so, as we did today to some of the Wasna area. What is the status of the evacuation warning for Upper Los Barros Canyon? That has been lifted and has been moved to green, or essentially that warning has been lifted for Upper Los Barros. The next is Highway 46, safe to travel. With the significant progress made on the north side of the fire, Highway 46 has no closures and is outside of any warning zones, and it would be safe to travel in relation to the fire. What is the estimated date for reopening High Mountain Road to residents? As we've spoke about, or as has been talked about tonight, that is one of the bases of the area for the burn operation. So High Mountain Road in that area, or in High Mountain, is going to be continually evaluated to see when it can be opened, but there is no specific date. The last one is, when will Highway 166 reopen? As I mentioned, I'll be happy to say so again, it is open to through traffic, although it is guided by a pilot car, so it may be a little slower than normal. That being said, those are all the questions I have. Feel free to put some others in the chat. In the Sheriff's Office, just know that we are happy and proud to serve the community, and anytime that we are able to do so, please reach out to us. Thank you.
Next up is online Ben Gray, District Ranger of the Los Padres National Forest.
Hi, good evening again. I have a few questions about access to the Ranger District and also to some of our recreation assets. One of the first questions was whether the High Mountain Lookout, also sometimes known as the Condor Lookout, survived. And I am pleased to report that it did. I've been told that it has had no impacts and that it is still intact. There are also questions about whether the Balmouth Gilead campground and the Garcia Wilderness and the High Mountain campground survived. I believe the High Mountain campground did. I need to verify that. The Balmouth Gilead campground, I think, has probably been burned over. What I can tell you is that even though I don't have a good answer on that today, we will be going out to do an assessment of all of our recreation assets, including those campgrounds, and we'll be able to not only determine what might have happened to them, but also how we can repair them and return them to service. That public access is an important value of ours, and putting things back as best as we can after an incident like this is something that we really concentrate on. I can't give you a timeline if that campground has been damaged, the Balm and Gilead in particular, but it's something that we'll be working on over the next months. But we'll have a better answer on that as soon as it's safe to go in to do the assessment. Another person asked on when some of the recreation areas close to New Quayama will be open again. Right now, the entirety of the Santa Lucia Ranger District is under a forest closure order. This is a large district. It runs from just south of Atascadero all the way down to about, Los Olivos. And so we've closed all those areas for public safety, not only for where the fire is burning, but where we thought it might burn, and also where we're putting in contingency lines with dozers and having a lot of heavy equipment move around. So I don't have a timeline on when we're going to open that yet, but we're going to have those conversations in the coming days when we might lift and revise that order into a smaller footprint. Now we have a better understanding of where the fire is wanting to move and what our suppression efforts are doing. We always have that conversation to make sure that we can keep the least amount of land closed as possible because this is public land and we want the public to be able to enjoy it. We also have to balance the need for public safety. There's another question about will the Ranger District open before the end of Zone A deer season? So I think rifle deer start on about August 9th, last Saturday, and it runs for about 6 weeks. I would like to say that I would think so, but I can't make you a promise at this point. We need to understand a little bit more about this fire and what the suppression repair efforts are going to take. Even when the fire is well contained, there's a lot of heavy equipment and crews running around trying to put the forest back to the way it was before the fire. Not just obviously we can't put back the burned vegetation, but the dozer lines and the types of suppression efforts that we took to make sure that the suppression efforts don't lead to more damage. And so we need to balance that desire to open with the need to complete our suppression repair. And so I'm not able to give you that answer today. We're always going to be evaluating, though, and opening as soon as we can safely do so. Those are the end of my questions, I believe.
And answering your questions next is Operations Section Chief Tony Achapini.
Okay, a couple of additional questions came in. The first one is, can you speak to the Santa Lucia wilderness? Would it be equally challenging if a wildfire developed? What I can say is the Santa Lucia wilderness, and really a lot of the entire district, is unique in that if you look at the way that these canyons and these ridge systems are oriented, it's unique to this stretch of coastline in California, and that presents challenges both from a weather standpoint and from a topographical standpoint. The other thing that I will say is that when there hasn't been recent fire, and we talked about the last fire being in the Garcia Wilderness over 50 years ago, there's a high dead component within that stand of fuel or that brush. That brush is a combination of both new growth, but a lot of really old growth. And so the Santa Lucia Wilderness is really not much different. I will tell you that on the south side of the fire, what we found is when that fire moved into the La Brea fire scar from 2009, it was much more receptive to suppression efforts. Things like fire retardant, things like dozer line, they were much more effective in that fuel bed versus in the much older fuel bed that hasn't seen fire history in some time. And I would anticipate the same sort of thing in the Santa Lucias. How is it looking northeast of Pozo Road and Park Hill Road? And that's not too far from where we are right now at the ICP. And again, I would just say that everything is looking good. That northwest portion of the fire, kind of up where you see on the map, the Division Foxtrot Hotel area, that's where we completed the firing operation last night. I spoke to earlier the 160-acre slopover that we had. Crews that have been aggressively mopping that up today, working helicopters in there with retardant right on the line. we haven't had any significant movement today, and I'm happy to share that. Again, we're not out of the woods. Crews are going to stay out there for the coming days, 24 hours a day, around the clock, working to make sure that we are doing everything we can to mitigate any additional spread of that fire.
And next, we'd like to bring up Scotty Jalbert of the San Luis Obispo County Office of Emergency Services.
Okay. One of the questions that keeps coming up is, how do I know which zone is under evacuation order or warning? And also some information about road closures. You can go to readyslow.org under Gifford Fire Information, and it will outline and have a map of all the evacuated areas, all the areas under warning, and all the different road closures. Next question is it safe to go ahead with vacation plans to visit SLO in nearby areas? Will smoke be intolerable for those who have insensitive groups? Probably again in the northeast part of the north part of the fire, there's some smoke there, but outside the areas of that, all the indications that we have through air quality indicators is that it's green, and you should be fine. As far as safety goes, if you are visiting the areas that are under evacuation orders, just monitor those situations until you arrive. Next question is, residents of Grover Beach, how can we support others in the county who are impacted by the fires? Where should they go for more information about this? So if you'd like to help those that need stuff, and donate, as an example, American Red Cross is a great source. They're the ones that staff our shelters. They're always in need of donations, so that'd probably be your best option there. And then I got a couple questions in regards to water quality in the Salinas River and concerns about downstream issues and how we're going to notify folks about their water quality. So first off, if you're on a public water system, and that includes for water coming out of Santa Margarita and water coming out of Lopez, those are all under treatment systems, and they will be able to treat and handle those situations. If you're on a private well, you're going to have to just monitor those contaminations, and if you have any concerns, you can reach out to our county environmental health department, and we'll put that on our website so there's more information about that. And then the final question is, are there any feasible impacts for erosion or future rains that could impact water flow? Who's responsible for the management of this, and have they reached out to the state and federal government for financial manpower assistance? So as we kind of get towards the success of this incident, our office in the Emergency Operations Center, we start working towards what we call our recovery phase. In fact, just before this briefing, I had a conversation with the Los Padres National Forest. And so what will happen is, as we enter into this phase, we'll be meeting with specialists from the federal side, most likely from a burn area emergency response team, and on the state side, a watershed emergency response team. There we will meet with specialists that are like geologists and hydrologists, and they will help us identify target canyons and target locations that could have issues with debris flows. Once we gather that information, we will develop an emergency plan, and we will reach out to the affected residents about that. And we'll also work with National Weather Service to help us monitor those situations. Thank you.
And next up is Kevin Bohall, one of our Unified Incident Commanders.
Okay, I've got quite a few here, so this will take a little bit. So the first one is actually about valley fever. So is there anything being done to mitigate the possibility of your heroes getting valley fever, which is endemic to this area, especially with all the dirt and brush being disturbed? So for those who aren't familiar with valley fever, it's obviously an illness that you can get when you're out there working in dirt. So dozer lines, areas you're mopping up, things like that exists in the soil. So yes, we do things to mitigate that. We did have, through the incident safety officer, we had a safety message on that in our incident action plan. We also do an incident safety analysis. It's called an ICS 215A. We actually have one on the wall here that references valley fever specifically. So those precautions are outlined in the safety message. And then if we do have somebody who has an exposure to valley fever, we actually have an exposure reporting system, and we would try and make sure people can mitigate that in that area. One thing you can do to mitigate it immediately is if you put water on it and settle the dust, that's a mitigation. So lots of opportunity there to make sure that people know about that and mitigate it and prevent them from getting it. Next one, for hillside residents, what actions or agencies would you recommend for pursuing neighborhood prescribed burns and advocating for fuels mitigation within our city? So one of the things obviously that should come out of this is people thinking about fuels mitigation. So fuels reduction in general obviously needs to become a way of life in California regardless of what the jurisdiction is. So understanding that if you don't reduce those fuels, you're putting yourself at risk for an incident like this impacting the values that you care about. Could be life, property, whatever else are the values other people care about. So some of the things that you can do, obviously it's not specific to what how large the neighborhood is or anything like that, but work with your local fire safe council. There's multiple grant programs that are out there. CAL FIRE Fire Prevention grants are one. Bureau of Land Management has grants. There's all kinds of different opportunities there to even get grant funded money to get fuels reduction done. As far as the prescribed burning specifically, obviously as an advocate for that, this county does support that under the right conditions. So obviously right now with extreme conditions, they probably wouldn't, they'd have to consider a permit, but through the LE7 process, you can get a permit to burn your own property. The other thing that comes out there is there's also prescribed burn associations that'll come out and assist you with that. But either way, if you call your local battalion chief or your local fire agency, you can definitely get some criteria, a prescription, so that you would burn during the right time when it's safe to do so, to go out and burn your own property. Certain things would need to be in effect. You need to have control resources. You need to be able to make sure that it doesn't escape to somebody else's property, things along those lines, and then get an air pollution control district permit to go along with that. All right, so more defensible space. If your neighbor doesn't have defensible space and it puts your property at risk, what should you do? So this actually happens quite often. We'll get calls for somebody that's worried about a neighbor's property, that they think that the fuels are too heavy on that property, or that it's going to impact the caller's property. So obviously PRC 4291 specifically talks about the 100-foot defensible space around a habitable structure. So if it's within 100 feet of their house, that is something that could be enforced. If it's outside of that 100 feet, it would have to be specific to a local ordinance. So if you're in a certain jurisdiction, there are local ordinances that could be larger than 100 feet or could be something else along those lines. Or if you're in a homeowners association, sometimes there's specific criteria outside the LE 100 program. So one thing, if you call, typically we will provide you inspection if you request that, but we're also going to inspect that whole neighborhood. So if we do one, we're going to go ahead and inspect the whole street while we're there. So understand that we're going to go in there and do what we can to make all of you safe. If possible and the grass is 3 to 5 inches, should you do more than 100 foot of clearing? I would say absolutely. So the reduced fuel zone, the state law is 100 feet, but I would go as far as you can or to your property line if possible. Larger parcels, you can do prescribed grazing. You can do, obviously, other thinning projects. There's all kinds of different mechanical thinning, dozers. The treatment methods are endless. You have a lot of tools in the toolbox, and it's got to be the right treatment method for the right piece of ground. Is there any benefit to hosing down plants near the home in addition to regular drip irrigation, and if so, when? If you do hose down plants or something, it typically needs to be close to when you're going to be impacted by fire. One thing you can do on a general basis is remove all the dead fuel around your house and make sure you water the plants you're trying to retain in your reduced fuel zone. So if you have certain species that are more drought resistant, or even species that aren't, the more you water them, the more they're going to be able to resist fire and be fire resilient if you have a fire that impacts your home. Will CAL FIRE be planning any prescribed burns in the area? I know that the unit does have some prescribed burns planned. The big thing I would say is obviously it's going to be weather dependent and when those burns are going to be in prescription. So when they plan those burns, it's something that we publicize ahead of time, obviously through public messaging, and we try and do the best time we're going to meet the objectives that are laid out in that specific project. Some of those are through the VMP or VTP program, and some of them are assisting other agencies in order to meet certain objectives depending on what the land use is. So the last one This is a good one. For the IC or the PIO, but who do we contact to show our appreciation for the incredible job and organization that we've experienced, and does it help? So one of the things I would say is I'll give you two things. One would be advocacy and the other would be patience. So as far as advocacy, I would say be an advocate for the agencies that assisted in this effort, whether it's fire, law enforcement, or cooperators. Be an advocate. Go out there with the support that you had, that we're trying to do the right thing to protect your property and get your life back to normalcy. But also be an advocate for your community. Be an advocate for the other citizens that were impacted. Be an advocate for citizens who did have items that were damaged or had loss, and for those that don't. That's one of the big things, and keep a good attitude and get ready for the next incident. Obviously for our appreciation, if you do these fuels reduction methods we were talking about, prepare for the next fire, prepare for the next incident. Those are all good things to do. And then the next one would be patience. Understand, even though it seems like things are going in a good direction, which they are, understand that it's going to take us some time to get to where we need to be. So we have a lot of things we have to do prior to getting people back into certain areas where their homes are, or to get where they can get back in and have a normal life because of things that were impacted. We're going to do it as fast as we can as a team, but that takes time, and please be patient during that effort. With that was the last question I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Bohall, and to all of our presenters. We appreciate you being here. That concludes our presentation tonight. If we have the need to have more community meetings, we will keep you posted on social media via the Los Padres National Forest Facebook page and YouTube as well. And also you can always find more information on the CAL FIRE San Luis Obispo social media pages. Thank you for being with us. Have a good night.